Hola, that means hello. In Espanol, Spanish. Okay, so this is Miss Nicola again, and we're going to talk about character development. So, what is character development? We're not talking about you developing your own character in the sense of being good, being honest, although those things are also important. We're talking about you developing your characters in a story. Here's a boy, here's a girl stick figure. Over here, the girl has feet, the boy doesn't. Let's give him feet. If we start giving him hands and all these things, it's not going to be a stick figure anymore. But yes, we want to develop our characters in terms of being able to understand our characters' backgrounds, their motivations, which means like what's important to them. Why do they do what they do? Right? We want to understand, who are their parents? What do their parents do? Who are their friends? What's important to their friends? All of these things are important because they all go into who our character is. So, or who our characters are if we have more than one character in our story, right? So, I know these aren't the best looking stick figures here, but when you have a story, a short story in particular, you have two types of characters. One type of character is what we call a flat character. A flat character doesn't really have any development. You don't really know too much about them. They just kind of jump from action to action, and we don't know why. So with the flat character, maybe if we had, for example, a story about a girl who shapeshifts and she turns into, different animals, she turns into different people and so on, and we just jump right in, and she's shapeshifting, and then, she's fighting somebody, and then she's shapeshifting again, and then the story ends, and it's like, oh, that was cool, but we don't really understand who she is or why she's doing those things, right? And we want to understand. And so for character development, we need to ask ourselves some questions. If you look online and you look up character development questions, you'll see these long lists, that are like, 80 questions, 300 questions. And you don't have to answer that many questions to yourself about your character before you get started. But you do need to answer certain questions. So, for example, we definitely need to know how to describe our character. So we'll just put description here. And we might have to move some of this other stuff around because we're running out of room. So we need a description of our character. Now, before you start describing your character in your story, you want to brainstorm, write some ideas down. What color are her eyes? Is there anything special about her eyes? Like, are they two different colors? The left one and the right one are two different colors. Do they shine a certain way? Are they very dull? Does she have like those big low eyelids where she looks like she's always ready to go to sleep? Or big bright eyes, where she always looks like she just drank 10 cups of coffee. We need to know. What about her hair? Is it long, short? What color is it? What style does she have, to her hair? Does she wear barrettes? Does she wear, a thick curly, black afro, that she sometimes pulls back into a puff, with a red ribbon? How does her hair look? Then we get to, physical description of the face. What kind of nose does she have? Does she have thin lips? Does she have full lips? All of these things we need to know. How does she dress? Does she have like a strong sense of style, a strong sense of fashion where she's always matching? She looks so cool. Or maybe she doesn't have the best sense of fashion, but it's decent. Or maybe she's always getting made fun of at school because she doesn't know how to put her clothes together. And that's why she gets into this whole shape-shifting thing, because she wants to change herself. And so she finds, some way to, be able to shapeshift so that she can change who she is because she's not happy with herself. She's not happy with the way that she looks. All of these things are important. Then beyond the physical description, which we definitely want to go into detail with that, we also want a description of the person's personality. You know, are they preppy? Are they super smart, like almost nerdy? Are they athletic? Are they a jock? You know, do they have a lot of knowledge and information? Do they have barely any knowledge and information? You know, and it's difficult for them because of that. Are they aggressive, a hothead, always yelling and losing their temper? You know, all of that goes into the person's personality. And with personality, you also get into these things called archetypes. And every show that you've ever watched has people of different archetypes. Like, for example, if you've watched Scooby-Doo, you know that you have Shaggy, and he's not too bright, but, you know, he still ends up helping to solve the case. You know, he's always eating. He's really close to Scooby, right? And then you have, I can't remember the guy's name with the blonde hair. And, you know, he's kind of like this strong guy. You know, he has the brawn. You know, he has some brains too, but he's mostly brawn. But then you have, I think it's Velma with the glasses, and she has the brains. And then you have the other girl, I think she has blonde hair, and she doesn't necessarily have all the brains, but she's really pretty. And then, you know, she helps to solve the case too. And so you basically have these different archetypes, like the strong guy, the nerdy girl, you know, which that could be reversed, like having a strong girl and a nerdy guy. And then you have the guy who's not too bright, but he's always eating, and, you know, he kind of stumbles into helping with the case. And these are different archetypes. You know, you want to have, if you have multiple characters that have different personalities, different archetypes, because that's what makes the story interesting. If you just had Scooby-Doo with just like 5 like strong guys and that's it, it wouldn't be as interesting, you know, as when we watch it and they have all of these different archetypes there, right? You also want to know your character's backstory. Did they have particular things that happened to them as a child? You know, did they get shipped off, you know, to another country? Did they live in a war zone? You know, did they have a great upbringing, but, you know, as far as finances, but they just didn't feel loved? You know, did they feel very, very loved and everything was perfect, but now things are kind of going crazy because they're getting these, you know, new skills, you know, shape shifting is a thing. It's not a thing. I don't think it's a thing. But in our story, it is. It is a thing. So we want to know the character's backstory. We want to understand them. So when you have the description, you have the personality, you have the backstory. You also want to know about the character's relationships with other people. You know, do they have best friends? Do they have sisters, brothers? You know, how is your character's, how are your character's relationships with other people, right? And that's how you go from having a flat character to having what we call a round character. A round character is a character that has this very developed, you know, backstory, personality, description, and also the character is going to grow during the story in some way. Like if you watched the last video, we read the story Thank You Man by Langston Hughes, and the little boy in the story, he started out snatching this woman's purse, and he wanted to get some blue suede shoes. That's why he did it. But she took him home, she fed him dinner, you know, she talked very nice to him, and he decided that, you know, he didn't want to take anything anymore, at least not from her, and he wanted to grow, and he wanted to be a better person. And so we saw some character development. Like if at the end of the story he had just taken her purse again, then it wouldn't have been such a great story. It would have been a little sad, maybe a little depressing, because he didn't grow in any way. And we want our characters to grow. Now, your character doesn't always grow to be a better person. sometimes your character may just grow to be a different person or to be a worse person than where they started. Maybe they start out as the hero and they end up as the villain, and then maybe they become a hero again. We don't know. It's your story. They don't have to grow to be like this perfect person. Like, okay, they started out bad, but now they're good. They could just be different. Like, for example, if you ever watch Batman, he started out as this innocent child. And then something happened to his parents that was super bad. And he ended up becoming this rogue vigilante. And he's, jumping off buildings and jumping through windows and beating people up. And that might be looked at as being something bad, right? If that's who you grow up to become. But in context, we look at it as something good and positive because he's beating up criminals, to make Gotham a better place, right? We can't really say if it's better or worse, but it's just different. Bruce Wayne grew in some way. He became a different person. And with any great story, your character is going to develop or grow in some way, right? So let's look at some questions that can help us to form our character and to develop our character. And this is from this site is called, this is the Character Questionnaire by Rachel Geisel of Real Good Writing. And she says, if you want to know your characters, you must know their psyche, which is like what they're thinking, their mindset, their influences, who's around them, friends, family, teachers, who's around them, their actions, what are they doing, right? So let's look at some of these questions. What do they want? Why do they want it? So, looking back at, our girl here, who becomes a shapeshifter, why does she want to be a shapeshifter? Why does she want to change herself in any way? There has to be some backstory behind that, right? What do they subconsciously want? What do they need? So on the surface, she may feel like she wants to change herself because she's not popular at school, right? Not popular. But underneath the surface, maybe she didn't receive enough love at home and she just wants to be loved. She wants to be accepted. She wants to have people treat her well. And so that's subconsciously what's going on with her and why she becomes the shapeshifter. What scares them? Well, maybe what scares her is never being accepted, never fitting in, never being loved. What does your character believe? How do they perceive the world? How are they wrong? Well, maybe she believes that if she could become anyone or become anything, then she'll fit in wherever she is because she's able to change herself. And how is she wrong? Well, she should just love and accept herself as she is, right? And then if you want to shapeshift and become like a lion or, a popular cheerleader, that's just something that you want to do, but it's not based on not loving yourself. If you had to sum up your character's values into 3 things, what would they be? Well, maybe with her, it's popularity, acceptance, and being loved. And these are just examples. But, it could be that your character is after money. You could have the shapeshifter who shapeshifts because he wants to go and, get money from various places. Maybe he wants to go into Hollywood, for example. If you have a character who values dragons, that's always a fun one. Then maybe he raises dragons because he values them so much. And he really loves his dragons and he fights to protect them. But then somebody comes along and, they're threatening his dragons. And so he has to do something different and it comes to a climax, the story. And then, from that you have your falling action and your resolution, right? Or someone might have revenge in mind or justice, anger, guilt, happiness, adventure. All of these are values. What's your character's past? What led them to this point? Map out a little timeline. That's always fun and helpful. You don't have to do all of these things, but definitely do some of these things. What were the most life-changing things that happened in your character's life if you had to sum them up? So that's something that can help too. Who are the influences in your character's life? Parents, friends, teachers, maybe somebody that, they don't know personally, but they really admire from books or television. How is your character's relationship with their mother, their father, their siblings? Who do they trust? Who would they call if they needed advice? And so this kind of goes on for a while. Again, you don't have to answer all of these questions, but these are just some things to think about. How does your character talk? Think about that. Do they have a certain dialect? Are there certain words that they always say? If you watch Naruto, for example, he has certain things that he always says. He wants to be Hokage. He's always talking about this, right? And so if your character is always talking about something, you kind of want to map that out in advance if you can. How would your character describe himself or herself to someone else? What's your character's life story? You can kind of go through, different questions with yourself. These are just some suggestions. What's your character's idea of perfect happiness, for example. And you don't have to, describe all of these things like, your character's feet and all of these things like in great detail in advance. But you do want to have, some idea of, your character's, again, description, motivation, personality. Let's put motivation here. Let's put it in red. Motivation, personality, backstory, relationships. And that's what's going to make your character round. And then also, just keep in mind, how does your character grow? Or, if you don't want to use that word grow, how does your character change within your story in some way? And so those are the things that you want to think about with character development. And if you think about those things, you don't have to answer all those 10 million questions that you'll see online. But if you can just put these things in: description, motivation, personality, backstory, and relationships, and work them into the story in a good way, then you'll be right on track and you'll have a great character, a round character, right? And you will have, as a result, a great story. So practice that when you're writing your story. Come up with a great character or some great characters, and you're going to have an awesome story.